Is it true that they send a bus around to pick up girls who want to party with the next Fed chairman?
So you can see why it's so important to get in.
Okay, well, which is the easiest to get into?
Why would you ask me that?
I was just asking.
My friend Eduardo bet over $300,000 betting oil futures, and he won't even come close to getting in. Hello! Welcome to this video. I wanted to do a quick frame recreation of David Fincher's The Social Network on my trusty Panasonic S5, and with some really cheap equipment, some cheap lighting and stuff. See if I can get anywhere near that frame. I'll let you be the judge of whether I got close or not. I always find it fun to try and recreate stuff out of movies, to figure out how the filmmaker did what they did and how they got the look. And I think it also proves a point that you do not need you do not need like a £100,000 camera to achieve good cinematic results. It's lighting is absolutely critical, and even that doesn't need to be super expensive. But it's basically, being creative with the stuff you've got. What I want to do in this video, I'm going to quickly show you what I used to set up this scene, and then we'll go into Premiere and I'll show you how I took the image off the camera, which looks like this, and then converted it into an image which looks like this, and then as compared to The Social Network, which looked like this. Yeah, hopefully you get something out of this video, and I'll try not to waffle too much. So let's get into it. All right, so first of all, let's talk about tech specs. So I'm shooting on the Panasonic S5 in Vlog 422 10-bit color in 24 frames a second. For lenses, I started off trying to use this 28mm contact Zeiss, but I found because it's so wide and it's only f2.8, basically the background was not sufficiently blurred out. So I ended up ditching that lens and I ended up switching to this 50mm 1.7, and I shot it all at 1.7. And I also put it in APS-C mode, which obviously makes it around 75mm in terms of field of view. And yeah, and because those Zeisses are fully manual, obviously there's no autofocus. So, and because I had to put the tripod like about 1.5 meters away, it was 1.5 meters away from where I was sitting. So obviously I did it the old-fashioned way and basically measured from my eyeball all the way to the sensor, past the lens to the camera body. That measured 1.5 meters. So I set my lens to 1.5 meters. And what do you know? It's in focus. Who needs Sony? I was sitting on the edge of the table there where that white water bottle is. And if we zoom out, you can see what I've got. Essentially, I've got the tripod there, which the camera was on, of course. And then to the left of me, I've got this 10 pounds neg fill. And I did have to move that around a little bit because I started off with it quite close and the shadows on my face were way too strong. So I had to back it off a little bit. Couldn't go too far because there's a sofa in the way. And then for my key light, all this is a super cheap, newer, and if we look at the back, it's just like one of these £50 jobbies, a 2.7K colour balance or colour temperature, and it's got a 5.5K or daylight colour temperature. So obviously I set it to the 2.7K colour temperature. One thing I forgot to mention, settings in the camera, I set the white balance in the camera to 4000 Kelvin. Why? Because I heard in an interview with David Fincher that when he's using tungsten lighting, that's what he sets his white balance to. So I copied him. Another thing I noticed when I originally put this key light up, the key light essentially was way too bright. Unfortunately, on the back of these things, I couldn't turn it down anymore. It's a cheap light, what are you going to do? So basically, I used the diffusion from my second one of these instead of just one. So there's two diffusions on it, and it was still way too bright. So luckily, I had some shears that I've used on projects before to cover up windows, and I folded that up into 4. Just knocking the exposure out of the lit up part of my face because I'm using a fantastic feature on the Panasonic S5, which is the the luminance metering. So I could see on the lit side of my face, before I'd put all those extra diffusions on, it was like +2 stops. Basically, I just added diffusion on until the lit side of my face was at 0. And then I moved the neg fill away until it was like 2 stops lower. So I just got the contrast ratio that way. I don't even bother using like waveforms. I do check them now and again, but false color, I don't really use any of that with this new spot metering system, where it's new to me. I think it's fantastic. The only other light I used was this ridiculously cheap Viltrox thing. You know, I think it's about 30 quid or something. And anyway, yeah, and I just set that color temperature to 2500K and put it on its lowest setting. Originally, I had it turned onto the background that I'm actually illuminating, but that was still too bright for the ambient, for the room tone essentially. So I then turned it that way and tried to bounce it off those tiles, and it was still too bright. So I ended up turning it into the corner, and it's dropped the room tone down sufficiently. Unfortunately, with this location, because it's all crappy beige like you get in these apartments, obviously it doesn't match the bar of the social network, which is a cracking location. But what are you going to do? You know, I'm on a budget. Final thing was haze. Lots of haze. So I've got this cheapo fog machine. It's not even a haze machine. I think it's like 30 quid off Amazon. Some cheapo fluid. Are you sensing a theme here? I basically work the cheapest way possible because I have not got tons of money to throw at stuff. So yeah, really, that is all of the gear, I think. Yeah, so I didn't even have like another light on me, like I didn't have a kicker on the back of me, which I believe in the frame. Definitely got a kicker going on in the actual finished film. By this time I'd run out of lights, so I didn't really have any other lights to use. So that was that. So yeah, what we'll do now is we will jump onto Premiere and show the raw footage and then how I graded it to match. And then that will be the end of this video. All right, so we're here in Premiere. Let's get into it. I'm gonna line up that frame there, and then I'm gonna go into comparison view. First thing I wanna do is put on some frame guides to make that the same. And then I'm gonna go into lumetri scopes, and we can now see where the film level is versus my level. So first things we're gonna do is we are gonna go up to here, and we're gonna put our Panasonic Vlog to Rec 709 look. And then the first thing I want to do is start getting the levels in the right place. So we can see here our white point is way, way higher. So I'm going to start dragging all this down. I'm going to start in the color wheels actually. And I'm just going to start bringing the midtones right down. And then the shadows. And then the highlights. And then I'm going to keep just tweaking these. And we'll leave it there for now. And then I'm going to start basically just introducing some color. So I'm pushing sort of yellowy green into the midtones. Trying to get that highlight and this highlight over here close. You know, it's we just need to push and pull stuff around until we start getting the same ballpark. We're introducing some blue into the shadows there, and there we start to see the color start to take shape. I think in the highlights in Fincher films, the white is never white. It's always pushed over into the color of the scene, which is yellow. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to go into basic correction here, and then I'm going to drop my white point until it's kind of in line. I'm going to go back to color wheels and start lifting my shadows a bit because they're starting to crush. Do the same here. Just lift it off that line. And now mine's actually starting to look a bit too green. So I'm going to go back in here and move that mid-tone over towards orange a little bit. So if we take a look at, and we'll come out of comparison view in a minute, and we'll take a look at, we'll turn on RGB parade. And then we're going to flick back and forth. So that's my frame, and that's the social network. So we can see they're round about the same. They're not absolutely bang on, but it's a completely different location with completely different lighting, etc., etc., etc. You're never going to get it identical, but it's close enough. If I take a look at vector scope, so my frame, slightly leaning towards more on red, go back into color wheels, and then roll that over. Now I think we need a bit more blue in the shadows. I mean, obviously my background as well is much brighter than what's going on in the social network in the bar. So I mean, what I could do if I wanted to was just move that up a layer, and then I could put another adjustment layer. In fact, I've got one here. Could just drop that on for the background. What I could do then is select that adjustment layer, go into effect controls, come out of this for a minute, hit that, create a mask. Could drop the background down more, like that. We'll go back to a comparison. I think that is very, very close to saying, you know, shooting this on a camera which you can pick up now for 800 quid, and some lights that cost in total probably 100 quid. It's not a bad match. You know, there's going to be people on the internet who are like, this, that, and the other, but who cares? It's just a little test, nothing more. I'm not trying to prove any massive point. It's just something to do when I've got a bit of a cold, just something to keep me occupied. So, but yeah, there you have it. I think that's about it.